Hello, Jason.
Good morning, John.
Last week, we finished a 4-week summer institute funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities on bioengineering, ethics, research, and the humanities, which was organized by the Center for Biology and Society and the Lincoln Center for Applied Ethics at Arizona State University. As a co-director of this institute, along with Dr. Erica O'Neill, would you comment briefly on what made you develop a proposal of this kind and approach the NEH?
Thanks for asking that question. It was back in fall of 2019 that we initially came up with the idea of applying to the NEH for a summer institute on this topic. One of the things that we were really interested in was exploring, well, first, whether the NEH would be willing to support an academic who is a humanist but is based in a School of Life Sciences. So I'm a philosopher of science and ethicist, and the NEH, we worried, would be more interested in funding somebody who looks more like a humanist from the outside than I do. But the real ambition was to find a way to bring humanities scholars into contact with bioengineering and all of these sort of emerging related fields, stem cell biology, the development of organoids, the development of neural prosthetic devices, and so on. We wanted to bring humanities scholars in contact with that research and work toward, together with those scholars, building the kind of space that's necessary to have really productive conversations about these complex technologies that reverberate with implications for the humanities. And at the same time, we believe the humanities has something significant to contribute to the development of these technologies and their future trajectories.
You said there was some kind of reverberation of technologies. Speaking of bioengineering and biotechnologies, there seems to be, at some level, this emphasis on post-humanism, transcending the human, and transhumanism. Even if we grant that some of the rhetoric is overblown, we have learned over the last few weeks that something is going on, something significant. From your perspective, what sectors would you say are seeing this change, the reverberation that you just mentioned? And if you have to look over the next 10 years, what might those changes look like and how might they affect society?
That's a really good question as well, John. Absolutely separating the hype from the reality is a critical first step. But at the same time, the hype does give us some indication of where things may be going. And at this particular moment, CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing technology is poised to infiltrate a wide swath of the biological research enterprise, making possible all kinds of forms of bioengineering, aspects of the human condition, and aspects of our global ecosphere, with potentially profound repercussions, ideally positive, but at the same time, there's plenty of work to be done to help ensure that. I also expect to see significant advances in the development of synthetic embryos, synthetic cells, and that too will have a profound impact, most likely on the study of developmental biology, but also with potential research applications in reproductive technologies and assisted reproduction more generally.
Very interesting, Jason. One of the scholars that you invited to speak to us at the Institute is Dr. Jim Collins, an evolutionary ecologist, probably. One thing that he talked about was the need to rethink scientific literacy. Given what you just said about these potentially disruptive transformations that are underway and that might have major implications for society, how would you say we should rethink scientific literacy in this context?
Jim Collins is, one of these remarkable people with a research focus on salamanders, but with the massive interests in science education that he's developed over the last 40 odd years here at Arizona State. When Jim talks about rethinking scientific literacy, I think I'm in agreement with him that what we need to do is get away from a deficit model and also a banking model, where the idea is, with the deficit model, if people only understood more science, they would be more willing to accept technological changes, more willing to accept these novel, potentially destabilizing kinds of technologies that are emerging. We want to get away from that. We also don't want to have a model of science education that focuses just on learning facts. Scientific literacy is not so much about learning the facts of science, it's about learning the processes of science, the contexts within which science takes place, the determinants of scientific research trajectories, from agenda setting through to dissemination plans and uptake, knowledge translation kinds of implications as well. And Jim talked to us about the idea, which we also talked about in our application to the NEH, of developing a sort of 21st century liberal art of science that would inform our education, so that we end up producing in our science classes, but also in our humanities classes, students who are able to talk to each other across the branches of the same tree: the humanities, the arts, the social sciences, and the sciences. And that requires significant work on the part of science educators and on the part of humanists, because too often we've been caught up in a trap where students just want to know what's on the test, and we've been willing to tell them, to educate them as if all that mattered were taking the tests. What matters is not taking the tests. What matters is being a socially responsible global citizen moving forward.
Your comments remind me, excuse me, Jason, of conversations that my fellow participants have had with you over the last few weeks. Mostly observations, in the sense that every single person, every participant expressed surprise and appreciation at the flexible organizational arrangements that you have at ASU. We are very surprised, because this is not how things usually operate. And so you have been an administrator. You have directed the Lincoln Center for Applied Ethics for several years. With that experience, would you comment on how an institution can develop a culture in which this kind of innovation, integrative research, and knowledge production can take place?
One of the challenges when we apply for grants from ASU, whether to the National Endowment for the Humanities or the National Science Foundation, when we humanists put forward these integrative or integrated proposals with scientists, one of the challenges is that inevitably somebody on the review committee is going to say, well, that would work at ASU, but it wouldn't work anywhere else. And so that knowledge, whatever they produce, that program, that system, it's just not going to be we're not going to be able to extrapolate it to other institutions. And I don't think that's entirely true, but I definitely now have a much better appreciation of just how unique we are, the sort of knowledge enterprise ecosystem that Michael Crow has been working on for 20 plus years here as president of Arizona State University is remarkable in what it affords us. We're allowed to teach interdisciplinarily. We're allowed to and encouraged to collaborate with those in very distant, sometimes, disciplines. As a humanist, I'm allowed to be affiliated faculty with a neurodegenerative disease research center that has no other humanists attached to it. And I'm not there as any kind of ethics police or whatever. I'm part of the knowledge generating enterprise. I realize now just how fortunate we are at ASU. I think the keys are to take seriously the idea that a siloed education and a siloed research enterprise are both going to fail us in the short term as well as in the long term. A siloed research enterprise is going to have us focusing on research problems that may not be, in fact, the ones that most need addressed. And even if we are working on the problems that need to be addressed, we're not going to be working towards solutions that are actually applicable outside of the silo. Simultaneously, if the educational enterprise focuses on a banking model and focuses again within silos, we end up with students who are incapable of integrating knowledge that they are gathering from different places. They're incapable of setting foot, say an engineering student, incapable of setting foot in an English classroom and appreciating why they're there, why that ought to matter to their education. Here, the entire enterprise is focused on breaking down those silos, breaking down those barriers. And so ASU has a bunch of schools and departments that don't exist anywhere else. And we don't have the traditional departments, some of them, that exist elsewhere. For instance, we don't have a geography department. We don't have an anthropology department. These are part of other schools. For instance, the School for Human Evolution and Social Change, which includes demographers and anthropologists and archaeologists. We've got the School of Earth and Space Exploration, where you've got your geologists, who typically focus on Earth materials, and your astrobiologists. This is one of the reasons why ASU is one of the largest recipients of NASA extramural funding, because connecting the problems of Earth and space exploration together, connecting those disciplines together, enables for a more robust, more well-rounded, better articulated, and more impactful research enterprise. And that trickles down to the students as well, many of whom get training as undergraduate scholars, but also who take classes that are that demonstrate knowledge integration as just the way things are, rather than it having to be magically done or not done at all, which happens elsewhere.
Thank you for those comments, Jason. You've given us many things to think about seriously, especially as we all go back to our home institutions.
You've left a lasting impact on me. I learned so much in these past 4 weeks. One of the drawbacks of living in a life sciences unit is I don't get to spend as much time with the humanists, even at a place like ASU. And so being here with classicists and English professors and, people who work in communication studies and disability studies has just been revelatory for me as well. So I'm excited to see what'll come next.
Oh, that is great to know. Speaking of what's going to come next, now that the Institute is over, what are your plans for the summer, and do you have any project that you're working on?
So I too have been trying to work on a syllabus this summer, informed by what we've been doing here for a new course on philosophy of biology for biologists. And that takes seriously the idea that very often philosophy of biology, or philosophy of science more generally, was undertaken looking at philosophical questions, but I think it's also important to take a look at biological questions. So applying philosophical thinking to biological problems. And so lots of people have been doing this, but I haven't seen a course like this yet. And so I'm excited to continue working on that. I'll do a little bit of traveling. Erica and I are editing a little report that the Lincoln Center is going to produce, and we'll be sending out to all the participants and circulating broadly. And then I think I am going to write a proposal to present this Summer Institute at the Society for Ethics Across the Curriculum meeting this October at James Madison University.
That sounds like a busy schedule, Jason. Well, you've, excuse me, thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Of course.
Appreciate it a lot. And thank you to you and Erica for putting together a wonderful institute.
I'm really glad you enjoyed yourself, John. And again, without Erica, this would not have happened at all. So I'm exceptionally grateful to her as well.
Right. Thank you very much, Jason. And I hope we get to continue these conversations over the years.
Me too.
Thank you.